Next slide, please. Welcome to DDRC, members, staff, and guests. We ask for your patience during this virtual meeting. Multiple staff members are behind the scenes to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly and all applicants and citizens are able to communicate with the Commission at the appropriate times. During the meeting, you will see live images or still images of DDRC members and staff. However, images of the applicant and the public will not be visible.
The public will also be able to participate via 3 methods. When participating, please provide your name with the communication for documentation purposes. So the public can either watch the proceedings, email, phone, or log into the web session. If you're going to watch, you can stream the meetings through the city TV, which may be accessed at www.youtube.com/user/Columbia-SC-government. If you're emailing, you can submit letters and statements to cocboardmeeting@columbiasc.gov leading up to and or during the meeting, as we're monitoring this account throughout the proceedings. Any emails or letters received will be read into the record. And then if you want to phone in, you can participate by calling 855-925-2801. And when prompted, please enter the meeting code, which is 8938. Those participating by phone will receive 3 options. *1 will allow you to listen. *2 will allow you to record a voicemail message that will be read into the record. And *3 will allow a participant to be placed in a queue so that they may speak live when prompted. And then streaming can be done via www.publicinput.com/COC-DDRC-June 2020. And again, that's www.publicinput.com/COC-DDRC-June 2020.
Staff, please call the roll.
Certainly. Mr. Broom.
Here.
Mr. Dinkins.
Here.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt. Ms. Jaco.
Here, sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Jaco.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
And Mr. Savory.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Okay. Applicants with requests before the DDRC are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the DDRC or staff regarding requests. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. Staff has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. The DDRC reserves the right to amend these procedures on a case-by-case basis. The DDRC uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. If a member of the DDRC or the general public wants to discuss an item on the consent agenda, that item is removed from the consent agenda and considered during the meeting. The DDRC then approves the remaining consent agenda items. Could we have the consent agenda, please?
Yes, we've had a few items deferred from the agenda. So let's see. Pardon me. Okay, so the consent agenda does stand, and that it begins with 1724 Ennery Avenue, which is a request for preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill in the Wales Garden Architectural Conservation District. 1208 Princeton Street, a request for design approval for construction of an accessory structure in the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District. 2409 Preston Street. This is a request for design approval for new construction in Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area A. And then 1639 through 45 Main Street. This is a request for preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill and design approval for exterior alterations on a building that's in the Columbia Commercial Historic National Register District and the City Center Design Development District. Those are all of our consent agenda items.
And as this slide says, the consent agenda includes approval of the May meeting minutes. So when we get to that point, it includes both the consent agenda and the minutes. Is there anyone on the DDRC that would like to remove any items from the consent agenda? Hearing none.
None.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Please
Hi, Mr. Chair,
communicate.
this is Andrew Livingood, and I do not see any callers or comments that have been registered.
Very good. At this point, then, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Sure. Motion to approve the consent agenda on the June 11th, 2020 Design Development Review Commission agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Great. Could we have a vote, please?
Certainly, Mr. Broom,
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins,
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt,
Yes.
Ms. Jaco,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Savory.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. The DDRC will now move forward with the items on the regular agenda. Could we have the first item, please?
We've had a few changes to the agenda since it was since the final agenda went out, and just to cover those, these were on the regular agenda. The first one was in our urban area, 1600 through 1620 Gervais Street. This was a deferral, and it was a request for new construction in the City Center Design Development District. And under the historic portion of the agenda, 1209 through 1211 Gadsden Street, a request for exterior changes and preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill in the West Gervais Street Historic Commercial District has been deferred, as has 2614 Kiowa, which is a certificate of design approval for demolition in the Shandon Community Character Area.
Thank you.
I realize just the case.
There is a lot of static. Sorry to interrupt. Is
Yes.
that just me? But there was a ton of
No,
static
but-
there.
I
Yeah, we
heard
can-
it too.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
Tom, I think it's yours.
Yeah.
No.
No.
How about if how's it now?
Better.
Good.
That's great.
That's good.
It went off too.
I get some background noise. Am I muted?
You're not now.
Okay,
I can just barely hear you though, Tom.
that was what I was afraid of. How about now?
Still low, but I can hear you.
Oh boy, okay. Let me try these again. How's it now?
Good.
That's better.
Okay. Let's start over again. Staff will introduce the case. The applicant will have 10 minutes to make a presentation. DDRC may ask questions. The public will be allowed to participate via email, voicemail, live, or via the web. The DDRC may then ask additional questions of the applicant, and then DDRC will take action. And I'd like to interject that the public will, after the public is allowed to participate, the applicant will have the opportunity in the aggregate to make any comments in response to comments from the public. What we typically do, if it's live or in person, the applicant can make comments after each comment made by a member of the public. In this case, we'll aggregate it, and that's when the applicant will have that opportunity.
So the first case on the regular agenda is 1700 block of Calhoun Street, intersection of Talley and Calhoun Streets. It's a request for a certificate of design approval for exterior alterations to an individual landmark. This one came to the DDRC a year ago, and the applicants had the ability to reapply after the lapse of a year. So that's what they are doing here. The request is for a widened opening to a secondary entry in the Bull Street wall at the intersection of Talley and Calhoun Streets. Along with a few other structures on the Bull Street campus, the wall is an individual local landmark. The wall itself wraps along a significant part of the campus along Bull Street, turns the corner onto Calhoun, and extends about 3 blocks down Calhoun until it turns onto Barnwell Street for the better part of the block. The wall itself has seen alterations over many years, the grand front entry and gates being removed in decades past, and the height of the wall partly reduced in height along Bull and Calhoun Street to allow transparency for victims of mental health reforms in the 1960s. Along Calhoun Street, a fairly elaborate arched entry without its gate at Pickens and Calhoun still stands, as well as the secondary entry, which is under consideration, and about 450 linear feet of 8-foot-tall historic wall. The secondary entry in question most likely served as a service entrance and/or a pedestrian access into the campus. It is about 14 feet in width, and it led to a drive which ran behind the Babcock Building's dining halls and in front of the laundry building and adjacent to other service buildings on the campus. As you know, the Bull Street campus is being developed into a mixed-use campus, including residential, office, commercial, and entertainment uses. The development agreement allows for access into the campus at 3 points along Calhoun Street. An intersection at Barnwell and Calhoun has already been developed, and the developers would like to use the street entry as a point of access as well, although it would need to be widened 8 additional feet to better accommodate traffic flow in and out of the campus here. Widening the entry would entail removing brick and removing and reconstructing one of the 10-foot-tall simple concrete columns which frame this particular entry. The developers have committed to not pursuing a third entry along Calhoun Street if this proposal today is accepted. While the removal of any historic fabric should be considered carefully, staff's opinion is that the understanding of the entry as a secondary or service entry onto campus would still be understood clearly with the proposed widening, and that this proposal will continue the pattern of only 1 point of vehicular entry to the campus along Calhoun Street. Staff has recommended that the 8 feet of removed brick be used to repair a hole in the wall along Bull Street and any other points of damage. Likewise, staff has also recommended that bollards be placed on both sides of the wall's entry, internal and external, to protect the wall from potential damage of the steadily growing use of this entry, which is really increasing daily and will only continue to accelerate as more buildings come into functional use. So staff recommendations include it's conditional approval based upon the following. Given that more traffic will be increasing and given the number of vehicular accidents which have already impacted historic features on the campus and the wall itself, Staff recommends bollards be placed on all sides of the opening, that the removal of the brick in the column will follow specifications as provided by staff, which will include supports for the wall during the deconstruction, hand chiseling the original brick and/or concrete from the wall, a mortar analysis, and retention of the original brick as proposed by the applicant for repairs. Staff strongly encourages that the applicant make every effort to repair the Bull Street wall along Elmwood Avenue. Sections are missing and covered with plywood, and that this repair work should be started immediately using any recovered brick and more if needed, and also using mortar analysis and staff guidance for this work. That staff work with the applicants on the recreation of the concrete column and its details, the one which would be removed and replaced. That if there is any failure of the historic wall as a result of the proposed work, the historic wall will be appropriately repaired or restored immediately. If approved, the understanding is that the Hughes Company has confirmed that a third entry along Calhoun Street will not be pursued and that a historic plaque will be mounted regarding the Bull Street campus and/or its wall. And staff would recommend a historic marker instead of a plaque to be mounted in the public way, with all details deferred to staff. I believe the applicants are here to speak to the project.
Hey, Amy, this is Chandler Cox, Development.
Hey, Chandler.
How are you? All right, can I like to share my screen with you guys? A lot of what I've got to show is also was pulled up while we were here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
And Chandler, if you would, this is a little odd, but
yeah,
I need to swear you in.
Oh,
you,
great.
Promise to tell the truth in these proceedings.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so thank you all very much for seeing us today, even virtually. Glad to be with you guys. And as Amy said, we applied for this DDRC application last year and were turned down. So we were going through the appeal process, and what we really learned through that is that we did not do a job of effectively communicating both what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do it. It also gave us the opportunity to reach out to more of the neighborhood, the Robert Mills District neighborhood, and also to Historic Columbia to get their input on this proposal, what we were doing, why we were doing it, and use them as a resource for moving this project forward. So as Amy said, through the Bull Street Development Agreement and also the form-based code, the Bull Street District is allowed 3 entrances into the fabric of that neighborhood along Calhoun Street. This is an exhibit from those documents that shows where they are, and you can see that the first one on the bottom left-hand corner of the page is at Henderson Street. What we'd like the DDRC to approve today is moving that dot basically just down the right to where there's an existing opening in the Calhoun Street wall. This is what the Calhoun Street wall looks like today. As you can see, there are entrance-only signs that were put up by the Department of Mental Health when the campus started getting more use. And the reason that they did that is even though this was always used as two-way, it was a secondary entrance, as Amy mentioned. So it really is only wide enough for one car to go through at a time. What we'd like to do is widen it 8 feet to the left and allow two-way vehicular traffic to go through. So still, keeping in the historic context of the wall and of the design, and then also allowing it to function a little bit more modernly for the Bull Street District. There are a couple of reasons that we like doing this instead of the Henderson Street entrance, which I'll show you in a minute, but one of the biggest pros to this approach is the traffic pattern. I know that's outside of the DDRC scope, but it does make a major plays a major role in the reasons why this is beneficial for everybody. It allows a lot better internal traffic to Bull Street. It also allows for better traffic patterning along Calhoun Street. There is a letter from Kimley Horn in the DDRC application where we asked them to evaluate both options, and this is what they recommended as the better way to handle it. The other thing that we learned as we're communicating more with the neighborhoods is that there is a concern about people using Henderson Street or other streets as cut-throughs of that neighborhood to get to Bull Street. And one of the things that this entrance at Tally allows is to offset some of that traffic that might be flowing through some of the other neighborhoods and alleviating more of that concern. So again, this is the entrance that was allotted by the Bull Street Development Agreement in the form-based code. And this is a photo of what that looks like today. So you can see that the wall has already been modified in this location, but the right-of-way along this Henderson Street is actually very wide. So this is something like what you would see if we were to open the wall in the Henderson Street location instead of in the Talley Street location. There are 2 oaks that are hoped to be preserved as part of the Babcock Building project. One of the things that we love about Bull Street are all the historic buildings and structures and trees because they make it so authentic to Columbia. So we've tried to keep as many of those that we can and are healthy, and they've been planning for retaining these trees in their master planning exercises. This is also another example of how the traffic patterning would line up at Henderson Street and how it would be, it would really create a little bit more of a confusing situation once you get into internal to the district. You can see that nothing really connects quite through. You go straight into a parking lot. It's just not great for circulation. So we would like the DDRC to approve the Talley Street connection rather than Henderson Street. And as Amy said, we would of course be willing to forego this opportunity at Henderson Street altogether should the Talley Street intersection be approved.
Thank you. Do other commissioners have any questions for the applicant before we move on to comments from the public?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is widening of the drive off the premises onto Calhoun. That's going to increase traffic at that location, and I'm concerned about the pedestrians as the drivers are going to be able to see as they leave the premises. That's my question.
That's a great question, Mr. Broom. And as far as creating more traffic, we know that there are going to be people coming to the Bull Street district, but what we've learned going through our traffic studies and working with Kimley Horn is that the more connections that we have to the outside of the district, the more that traffic is going to disperse. So, you know, giving people more of an opportunity to get onto Calhoun rather than just at Barnwell and at Gregg, you can kind of spread that over 3 entrants rather than 2. So that is one of the reasons that we, you know, one of the reasons we asked for the 3 and were granted the 3 access points onto Calhoun Street. As far as the pedestrian goes, we certainly understand that concern and want to be as respectful of the wall as we can. So that's why we've only asked to take 8 feet for 2-way vehicular traffic. What we would like to do is open the Pickens Street gate to allow pedestrians to use that access point. So we can direct people to either side of that, just knowing that really we're not trying to direct people pedestrian or on foot through this gateway.
Ms. Cox, I apologize. I know this has been on the agenda several times, and
yes,
I just have a question that may be somewhat out of our purview, but just out of my curiosity, is DOT fully on board with this proposal?
So this is actually a city street. We do not have to go to DOT for this, and the city is.
Well, even though I'm sure David Brewer is, I'm just curious if DOT has been approached, even though it is a city street. They own many streets around the surrounding area.
They do, and we have not approached them with this particular intersection, just given that it's a connection at the city level.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that that's pretty standard, Sanford.
It is.
Yeah.
So is this going to align with the? Can we zoom out and see where this aligns with the opposing street?
In the Bull Street district?
Yes.
I don't have a good graphic of that in this presentation. Well, but what I can share with you is there's a street that runs directly behind the Babcock building, and that's actually was the original location of this street where the one-way entrance exists. So it will go all the way through to what's called Saunders Street now, that backs up to the baseball stadium at Sager Park.
And then you're going to eliminate the additional entrance that was allotted to you?
Correct. basically we're just asking to move, move the Henderson Street entrance to Tally, and we will forego Henderson if that's granted.
Yes, I mean, I think that's a positive move for the neighborhood. And again, maybe behind the curve, but pedestrian improvements have been considered, crosswalks and so forth. I know a little bit out of our purview. I'm just.
Yeah. So we have actually, we've engaged, we've gotten a proposal from Bennett Preservation, which is a group that was recommended to us actually by Historic Columbia. Robin Waits and her team we work closely with, and have gotten her support after a number of conversations on this, but they recommended that we reach out to Bennett Preservation for exactly how we do this. And as part of those conversations, I think we really dive into the details of what the pedestrian experience is. If they're not coming through here, where are they coming sort of through the spaces in this wall? Where do we direct people? So that is certainly something that we will consider as we further refine how we connect here if we're granted that ability.
Well, I do think that I want to say I commend your effort in reducing the amount of wall that you have removed. I think from what I've seen from the original proposal, I think it's a good improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Well, we will give a lot of credit to Amy and her team for that, because we worked very closely with them on coming up with what the right approach is. So we appreciate that.
Any more questions of Ms. Cox by the members? Okay, hearing, and I would add that this is, I'm not sure how much different it is in substance from a year ago, but in terms of presentation and explanation, I think it was a different presentation and a different explanation that is, I think, easier for us all to understand. So with that, I'd like to open it to comments from the public. Surely there are some. There we go. We encourage those that would like to communicate via email to begin sending in letters and emails to the email address that I think you see on the screen. Is that right, Amy?
That's right.
We also encourage those wanting to leave a voicemail to begin leaving the voicemail using *2. We will start to receive comments from the public who choose to speak via phone live. Please press *3 to join the queue. And please make sure your computer audio is off when you call to avoid feedback. Do we have calls coming through or?
We are waiting to hear from Mr. Livingood to see if there are any calls still,
Okay.
so.
Amy, Andrew just texted me and he indicated that there are no calls for this item. And
Okay.
I can also confirm for you at this time, there are no emails. And also just from a technical perspective, Andrew says that he is muted in Zoom and he cannot unmute himself. So that's why we did not hear from him.
Thank you.
So if you could unmute him, he would be able to talk. But at this time, we have no, and no one's called in and no voicemails. And I will double check one more time. We do not have any emails.
All right, thank you.
So does that mean we have no comments from the public?
That does mean we have no comments from the public.
Okay, well, in that case, I think it's time to move on to a vote. Yes.
Chairman, can I ask the staff to maybe just give a little more information on the Bull Street reconstruction? And again, it's talking about, I hate to ask that, but coming in late, I know this has been on the agenda before. I don't think we've touched on that.
You're talking about how we're going to treat the area where the brick is removed.
Right, to repair the Bull Street wall along Elmwood.
Right. Yes. So what I see happening is that there's going to be a very careful deconstruction, a removal of the column on the left side of the entry, with a lot of, I would say, documentation as to that column and its detail. It's very simple, so that shouldn't be an issue. And then a hand chiseling and removal of the brick, 8 feet of the brick, to get to where the Hughes Company needs it to go to widen the entry. And then we will take a new concrete column and attach it to finish off that end. But we'll make sure anything that needs to be remortared, the mortar is actually going to match the mortar that's there. If you go with mortar that's not the right composition, you can cause all kinds of trouble with historic brick. So we'll do the mortar analysis and then we'll reconnect a new column to the left. And it will be essentially the same, but my intention is that there should be a little bit of detail that's different from the original column, just so that it reflects that it is not the original, but not in a terribly, in your face kind of way. So what remains of the wall, it should be supported during that process, and it shouldn't look any different than it does now. So if there are any problems with it, then I would anticipate that work would stop immediately while we step back and take a look about how to protect the wall but it seems pretty sturdy right now, and I think if we go after it carefully, we can do this well.
I mean, there's a lot of things in here that staff is going to have to pay really close attention to, and I'm sure you know that.
Yeah, yes, I do. But that's typically what we do on any kind of follow-up on any of our cases. So new construction, exterior alterations, we're all in the details of those things. So this isn't terribly different.
This looks, all of the conditions that you've named, that staff has named, look well within the typical kind of conditions that I'd expect to see on a historic project. Was that all that you had, Sanford?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in moving to a vote, my first question is actually one back to the applicant. I agree, I don't know how other commissioners feel yet, but I agree with all of the conditions that staff has recommended. Are you in agreement with those conditions?
We are.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion on the part of PDRC members before I ask for a motion?
No.
Hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion, please?
Yes,
Dickens.
I can make a
Great.
motion if you want. Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you.
having working on this campus, I see a lot of good things in this proposal. So
Okay.
I move that the Design Development Review Commission accept, let me,
Grant a certificate of
yes,
design
grant a
approval.
certificate of design approval for the exterior alterations at the 1700 block of Calhoun Street, and also to include staff's recommendations and considerations.
And could you read those, please?
You want to read all of the staff
Yeah, if
recommendations?
you
Okay,
could.
sure. I got to get closer to the screen.
Okay.
All right. So given that more traffic will be increasing this opening with the proposed modification, and given the number of past vehicular accidents which have impacted historic features on the campus and the wall itself, staff recommends that bollards be placed on all sides of the opening to protect the wall. Secondly, the removal of the brick in the column will follow specifications as provided by staff, but which will include supports for the wall during the deconstruction, hand chiseling the original brick and or concrete from the wall, a mortar analysis and retention of the original brick as proposed by the applicant for repairs. Third item, staff strongly encourages that the applicant make every effort to repair the Bull Street wall along Elmwood Avenue, where sections are missing and covered with plywood, and that this repair work should be started immediately using any recovered brick and more if needed, and also using the mortar analysis and staff guidance. Fourth item, that staff will work with the applicants on the recreation of the concrete column and in its details. Fifth item, that if there's any failure of the historic wall as a result of the proposed work, the historic wall will be appropriately repaired or restored immediately. Sixth item, once approved, the understanding is that the Hughes Company has confirmed that a third entry along Calhoun Street will not be pursued, and that historic plaque will be mounted regarding the Bull Street campus and or its wall, and that staff recommends a historic marker in its deed to be mounted in the public right-of-way. And then the final item, that all details to be referred to staff.
Excellent, thanks. I would make, if I could, just a couple of minor amendments to that with the language of staff. Put commission members, for instance, I think with, rather than on the bullet point, staff strongly encourages, DDRC strongly encourages. There was one other or two others that DDRC just strike the staff would recommend, and on the next to last bullet point, and just say that a historic marker in its stead will be mounted in the public right of way.
Right. Okay.
There was one other near the beginning, but that'll probably suffice. You know what I mean? Okay.
I think maybe the third one, Tom, that staff or the DDRC, they will repair.
The DDR,
yeah,
the applicant will make every effort. Like that language. That was it. Thanks, Anthony. Okay. Any other discussion before we? Well, we need a second first.
I'll second.
Any other discussion before we vote? Could we have a vote, please?
Certainly, Mr. Broom.
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins.
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt. Ms. Fuller-Wilt.
Keep forgetting about the mute. I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Jaco.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson. Okay, and Mr. Savory.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next item.
Amy, this is John. Before you move on to the next case, you did unmute Andrew, but he actually needs the 855-925-2801 number. That is actually the public input number where he can speak to you. So
I think Joshua is handling that.
okay, maybe Joshua unmuted him. Andrew, can we hear you now?
Let's see, Joshua said he only has the option. Oh, there you go. Andrew?
Yes, this is me. Can you
Good.
hear me now?
Yes.
We're all set for the
Great.
next case then. Great. Thank
And
you,
then
everyone.
were y'all able to hear my vote the last time? I think I was in the wrong window.
Oh, Ashley, no, we couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was saying yes, but now you can hear me. I apologize.
All right. Thank you so much.
I hope you weren't saying yes to the wrong thing.
No, I wasn't.
All right, we ready for the next case?
Please.
We are.
Okay, so this is 3217 Amherst Avenue. The current proposal is for request for certificate of design approval for a 12 by 10 one-story addition off the left driveway side of the house within the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District. While the size and scale of the addition is subordinate to the house and proposed windows and roofing materials and details are in keeping with the guidelines, staff has concerns about the proposed siding material of the addition. Also, staff wanted to point out that the proposed location of the addition differs from what is typically approved for additions. So related to the siding of the addition, guidelines state to site additions so they do not detract from or obstruct important architectural features of the existing building. The addition is proposed to be located off the side of the house, from the far back left-hand corner, 12 feet off the side and 10 feet back. While staff typically recommend siding additions off the rear of the house rather than sides to avoid disrupting historic massing and form. In the case of this particular addition, the applicant has proposed this location in an effort to minimize water runoff issues as they are adjacent to commercial properties that back up onto their property. I'm going to let the applicant speak a little bit more about that after I run through my presentation. But because of those water runoff issues that they have, staff recommends that the DDRC consider extenuating circumstances when determining the proposed addition's compliance with this guideline. As it relates to the siding material, the guidelines state to design additions using materials and detailing compatible with the original structure. The applicant has proposed board and batten siding to be consistent with the rear additions and to mimic similar design found within the side gables. While the board and batten material might be present in the side gables, it would be used as an accent material in that case, rather than as a siding material. Using accent materials as siding for additions is not compatible with historic patterns. Siding materials within this neighborhood include primarily brick houses with some use of horizontally lapped wood siding. So staff recommends that the siding material of the addition be changed to either a lapped siding, which can be a cement fiberboard, similar to their adjacent garage, or to a brick to match the house to be in keeping with neighborhood patterns and the guidelines. So for staff recommendations, staff recommends that the DDRC consider the mitigating circumstances of the property as it relates to location of the addition and its overall effect on historic massing. And should DDRC find that the site of the addition is in keeping with the guidelines, with mitigating factors in mind, staff recommends granting a certificate of design approval based on Section 10 of the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District guidelines with the following conditions. A compatible material such as lapped cement fiberboard or brick be used for siding in place of board and batten siding. Windows be wood or aluminum clad wood with exterior muntins, and all other details be deferred to staff. And I believe the applicant would like to share their screen to do their presentation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
My name is Chad Johnston. Along with my wife and two daughters, I live at 3217 Amherst Avenue in the Oakwood Court neighborhood.
Mr. Johnston, I need to swear you in. Do you promise to tell the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you. You can proceed. Thanks.
I affirm the truthfulness of my statement that my wife and I live at 3217 Amherst Avenue. So we purchased this property in January of 2013 and have lived in the home since August of 2013. When we purchased it, it was in a substantial state of disrepair, and prior to moving in, we completed a top to bottom renovation. We worked in consultation with preservation staff, including both Miss Moore and Miss Walling's predecessor, Jerry Threet. We repaired all of our existing windows, even though a majority of them were in disrepair and could have been replaced. I've since worked in collaboration with staff to do other exterior renovations and changes over the years, all of which have been approved on the staff level. So this is my first time that I've appeared before the commission regarding a requested alteration. We are proposing today to do a relatively small 12 by 10, approximately 120 square foot addition for a mudroom off of the kitchen in our home. Now, the guidelines for Oakwood Court provide that additions are allowed to meet the changing needs of the owners, and it's in that spirit that I'm here today. I have a growing family, 2 young daughters. The entire first story of my home is a living area. It consists of a kitchen, a dining room, and a living room den combination. The downstairs entry points to my home lack any sort of dedicated space for jackets and shoes and storage. The kitchen in particular has no pantry. The second story is entirely bedrooms and bathrooms, and the only laundry area in the house for the entire family is approximately 28 square feet, and it's located on the second floor, and due to the size has no storage either. And so it's because of that lack of storage and usable utility space, which we significantly need, that we have proposed this addition. And as I say in my application, and I want to emphasize to the commission today, this is a functional need, not a luxury addition by any stretch of the imagination. As to the proposed location of the addition, my proposed addition is located off of the left side of the house at the rear of the home, and is marginally visible from the public right-of-way. The location there is purposeful. First, locating a mudroom off of the driveway and kitchen, I would submit is the logical place to put it. Most mudrooms are similarly located. And the primary point in my discussions with staff regarding this proposal is the location of that mudroom. Even off the side, the addition would be marginally visible due to the existing shrubs and plants, trees, and brick fencing, many of which are visible in the submission that I made as a part of the application. And in those discussions with staff as to why the addition was where it was proposed, they said, well, why can it not go off of the back of the house, which is a fair question. Although I would note that there's no requirement in the guidelines that additions be located off of the rear of the existing property, but as agreed to staff in its report, a significant amount of mitigating factors for locating the addition where I do. First, the home was built in or about 1924. It's one of the first on the street. There's also a freestanding 2-car garage to the back left of the home, which we believe was built in the 1940s or 50s. And at that time, it appears that a substantial amount of unique brickwork was also installed behind the house. There's a brick courtyard and pathways that encompass an area of grass in the backyard. And again, you can see that in the pictures that I've submitted. I would submit that brickwork is every bit as historical as any other feature of my home, and even though none of it is visible from the public right-of-way. And it's not just visually pleasing, it also serves a significant function. I have to hand it to whoever installed that brickwork back in the 1940s or 50s, as it functions perfectly to shepherd rainwater during large storm events. And I have shown on the screen a picture that I submitted from Google Earth. This is significant because the topography of my property and also who is adjacent in terms of the back property owners. Oakwood Court, as you know, is surrounded by commercial areas. The back of my property shares a boundary with 2 commercial businesses that front on Millwood Avenue. One is a law office, The second used to be a salon until it was recently sold. But critically, because both properties are commercial businesses with no parking in their front, the entire backyard, so to speak, of both properties is paved. You can see that in the picture that I included. Also because, also my property slopes significantly from back to front as well as left to right. So in the picture, the topography goes from bottom left to the top right of that picture. And this is important because in large storm events, all of the rainwater falling on my neighboring properties to the rear flows onto my property. But because that brick is in the place that it's in, and because it's sloped from back to front and also tilts slightly towards my driveway, during these large rain events, the water is actually shepherded down that brick away from my house and down the driveway. I cannot overstate the significance of that. If I were to locate the proposed addition behind my house, I would be forced to dig up that existing brickwork. And I'm not exaggerating to say that it would literally create a pool in my backyard during large storm events. And like everyone else, I like pools, just not ones filled with other people's stormwater runoff. So all of that is to say, the proposed location of the addition is ideal for two primary reasons. The first is, again, the location off the kitchen is functional. If the mudroom is located off of the driveway, is not located off of the driveway and the kitchen, it ceases to be a functional option for my family. And second, and most importantly, it avoids impacting that historical brickwork behind my house that functions to dispel rainwater during those rain events. So in the time I have left, I'd like to address the proposed materials. The addition is proposed as a board and batten because that would match the existing eaves of my house, as well as the side porch that is visible on the right side of my house. I would tell the commission I'm not necessarily wedded to board and batten, but I thought that it made the most sense aesthetically to propose. I would be fine using the lap siding as staff suggests in the alternative. I would note that I would be opposed to a brick option for several reasons. First being cost. Brick is substantially more than the siding option. But second, I've made an accommodation on the placement of the windows spanning the entire front of the addition in consultation with staff, and the combination of those windows with the existing shrubs and trees and fence, there actually would not be any brick visible from the public right-of-way. And so I would respectfully request that project be approved without the requirement of using brick. So, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of myself and my family, thank you for your time and consideration. Also like to thank Rachel and staff for her time and consideration. Even though we haven't always seen eye to eye on the details, we've, I think, come to a reasonable compromise here, and I appreciate the staff's recommendation of approval of the project. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Let me cut to the chase. It seems as though staff feels as if there are mitigating circumstances which were explained in the application and by the applicant's additional information. I'd say the other mitigating circumstance has to do with the way that the structure is unusually sited on the lot, tips it in a way that makes the addition less visible even than it would otherwise be. So if I understand correctly, I mean, unless other commissioners feel inclined to go against the staff recommendation, Mr. Johnston, you've already said that you are fine with lap cement fiberboard. So it sounds like everybody's in agreement, unless I'm missing something. Sounds like I'm not missing something.
I agree with Tom.
DDRC
Chairman.
members have any other comments about that? It sounds like there's some friction, but I think everybody's in agreement, unless I'm missing something.
No, if they're willing to go along with the staff recommendations, I see no issue.
I think
in my opinion,
we're okay. Well, at this time, then let me ask staff to go to any comments that might be from the public. Oh, I'm supposed to. We encourage those that would like to communicate via email to begin sending in letters and emails. You see that address. We also encourage those wanting to leave a voicemail to begin leaving the voicemail using *2. We'll start to receive comments from the public who choose to speak via phone live. Please press *3 to join the queue. Please make sure your computer audio is off when calling to avoid feedback.
Mr. Chairman and Ms. Moore, Andrew is muted again, so could we just pause until either Amy or Josh is able to unmute Andrew? And as long as I'm speaking at this time, we do not have any emails.
John, I don't have the ability actually to unmute Andrew. Lucinda is the co-host and she's running the slide. So
okay. He's not muted on my screen. The only option
I think he's good.
I think Josh took care of it. Sorry about that. There's a little technical difficulty. The call was disconnected from public input. So currently I do not have any callers, and I'm just refreshing the comments to see if any have come in. And it does not appear that there are any callers or comments that have come in.
Thank you. Before I move for a vote, I didn't really ask other commissioners if they had any questions for the applicant. So let me ask that now before we move on. It doesn't sound like it. And Mr. Johnson, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that you will accept the choice of lap cement fiberboard, which is one of the staff recommendations. So unless I hear otherwise from you, I'm going to ask someone to make a motion.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I will make a motion that we grant a certificate of design approval for the addition at 3217 Amherst Avenue with the conditions that a compatible material such as a lap cement fiberboard or brick be used for siding in place of board or batten siding. Windows be wood or aluminum clad windows with exterior mutants, and all other details deferred to staff.
Could I, Mr. Dickens, make a slight amendment to that also to add to that we make recommend the approval of recommended certificate of design approval based on in consideration of the mitigating circumstances of the property as it relates to the location of the addition.
Sure. Yes.
And based on Section 10 of the Oakwood Court Architectural Conservation District. And then the rest as you stated it.
Yes.
Is there a second? And any further discussion? Hearing none, may we have a vote, please?
Certainly, Mr. Broom.
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins.
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt.
Yes.
Ms. Jaco,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Savory.
Yes,
The motion passes.
thank you. Next case, please.
This case is for a proposed new construction located at 1108 Queen Street, which is currently a vacant lot. It's located in the Old Shandon, Lower Waverly area along a moderately lost area of Queen Street. The proposed new construction is similar in style and form to the bungalows found throughout the Old Shandon, Lower Waverly area and is a one-story single-family residence. The applicant has worked diligently on this design to meet all staff recommendations. However, there was a slight change on the final plans submitted that shows vertical siding in the front-facing gable. Previous plans submitted by the applicant had shown shingle siding in this gable, which better represents the historical siding detailing seen throughout the district. Vertical siding is not permitted according to the guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. That the siding in the front-facing gable be changed to better exemplify historic examples in the district. Earlier plans submitted by the applicant showed synthetic shingles in the front-facing gable, and this would be in keeping with the guidelines. All other details deferred to staff.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
I believe so.
All right. If the applicant wishes to speak.
I am one of the applicants.
Okay. If you could state your name and I'll swear you in.
Yeah, my name is Wayne Fisher, and I'm with Hurricane Builders.
Do you promise to tell the truth in these proceedings?
Yes, I do.
Let me ask, this is just a little unusual, but let me ask you a question just in the interest of perhaps cutting to the chase. Are you, would you be in agreement to switching back to the synthetic shingles?
Oh, absolutely. I've already done that.
Okay. Do you have anything further that you wanted to say? Because we might make very quick work of this.
No, I'm just here to help answer any questions is all.
Okay. I didn't mean to cut you off, but very good. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
I do not.
That said, could I have a motion, please? Well, I guess we need to the comments from the public. We encourage those that would like to communicate via email to begin sending in letters and emails to the email address you see. We encourage those wanting to leave, and not so fast, to leave a voicemail to begin leaving them, the voicemail using *2. We will start to receive comments from the public who choose to speak via phone live, press *3, and make sure your computer audio is off.
Mr. Chairman, this is John. We do not at this time have any emails that have been submitted.
Okay. Do we need to wait any longer, do we think?
I believe Andrew's he is connected and he should be able to tell you if anyone's called in.
Okay, great.
Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I apologize for that. I was just checking through to see if there are any comments or any callers that have indicated they wish to speak, and at this time we do not.
Very good.
And no emails in that few minutes.
Okay. I think I will move on. At this point, would somebody please make a motion?
I can handle that. I
All right.
move in accordance with Section 9 of the Old Shandon Waverly Design Guidelines and Section 17-674 of the City Ordinances that we grant a certificate of design of approval with the following caveat. The siding in the front-facing gable should be changed to exemplify historic examples in the district, and we have agreed upon synthetic shingles to be used in the front-facing gable as that complies with the guidelines before referenced, and all other details will be deferred to staff.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a vote, please.
Mr. Broom,
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins,
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt,
Yes.
Ms. Jaco,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Savory.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Do we have any further business?
Only one item of business. I just wanted to inform the commission that Mr. Bachnight has resigned from the commission. So we thank him for his service, and we will be looking for some new commissioners. So
How many open spots do we have right now?
we have 2 open spots.
And what are
Yeah.
what are those spots?
One is a community rep. That was Mr. Bachneight's position, and the other is for a realtor. That was Miss Moore's position on the DDRC. Yeah.
Well, they both served the commission really well, so hopefully we will have somebody to fill their shoes.
We hope so.
With that, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.